In a land kissed by the warmth of the African sun and cradled by ancient baobab trees, the village of Ndogo lay spread out like a tapestry woven from generations of hopes and dreams. Here, amid the red soil and whispering grasses, a child was born under a sky strewn with glittering stars. His arrival was heralded by the soft murmur of the wind and the rhythmic beating of drums during a night-long celebration. His parents, Musa, a stoic yet hard-working man with a heart as vast as the savannah, and Amina, a gentle woman whose eyes shone with fierce tenderness, saw in their son, whom they named Kinna, the embodiment of their unspoken dreams for a brighter tomorrow. From the moment Kinna's tiny hand grasped his mother's finger, the entire village believed that he would become the bridge between the old ways and a future filled with promise. Musa worked the fields from dawn until dusk, plowing the rugged land with determination, while Amina cared for the homestead, weaving colorful mats and telling age-old folktales of their ancestors. Every gesture, every tender word, was an act of love, a vow that their child would know nothing but the best life could offer. Yet even in those early days of pure hope, there was an undercurrent of a bittersweet irony. Musa and Amina, though devoted beyond measure, were bound by traditions and expectations that shaped not only their lives but the destiny of every child born in Dogo. Their love was a fierce, blazing fire meant to warm Kinna, but it was also a force that demanded sacrifice, discipline, and an adherence to customs that left little room for gentle indulgence. As the village gathered to celebrate Kinna's first months of life, elders spoke in hushed, reverent tones about the destiny that lay ahead for the child. They recounted ancient prophecies that spoke of a young soul who would grow into a beacon of hope for Ndogo, a living testament to the sacrifices of the past. In every smile that Kinna offered and every coo of delight that escaped his lips, his parents saw the fulfillment of those ancient promises. Their days were filled with quiet devotion and an unyielding desire to prepare their son for the future, even as they themselves bore the weight of a harsh world where every moment was measured by toil and the relentless march of tradition. In the early years of Kinna's life, the world was a gentle place, lit by the soft glow of dusk and the exuberant laughter of children at play. The sprawling fields and clustered huts of Ndogo were not merely a setting. They were the living embodiment of tradition, hope, and the enduring rhythm of nature. Kinna grew among these ancient rhythms. His first steps were taken on paths trodden by his ancestors, and his earliest words were softly echoed in the songs of the elders. Musa would carry Kinna on his broad shoulders as he led him through rows of millet and sorghum, teaching him the art of coaxing life from the parched earth. Under the open skies, the boy's eyes sparkled with innocent curiosity as he learned to distinguish the chirps of different birds and the secret language of the wind. Amina, with her gentle hands and soft voice, taught him the art of weaving tales, the way that every fabric, every pattern, told a story of their people. In these moments, Ndogo was a world of wonder and unspoiled love. But even as Kinna laughed and played in the shimmering light of day, a quiet undercurrent of expectation began to weave itself into his every experience. His parents, though bound by love, were also the custodians of traditions that demanded excellence and unwavering obedience. Musa, a man hardened by the struggles of the land, believed that each day's work, every bead of sweat shed in the field, was a lesson in duty, a necessary preparation for a future where weakness was a luxury no one could afford. Amina, with a heart both soft and resolute, wove into her stories the importance of discipline, cautioning her son that the world could be unkind to those who strayed from the path of rectitude. As Kinna grew older, the lessons of tradition began to press upon him. The playful freedom of childhood gradually yielded to a structured routine, one where mornings were spent in diligent study, afternoons in assisting with the labor of the fields and the household, and evenings in reciting the folk tales that carried the weight of generations. The village, too, watched him with hopeful eyes, whispering that this child would one day rise to become a pillar of their community. In each stern word of advice and every expectation laid upon him, however, there was an unintended measure of severity, a pressure that Kinna absorbed with quiet resignation even as it began to cast long shadows upon his once bright spirit. By the time Kinna reached his 10th summer, The burden of expectation had begun to manifest itself in ways that no child should ever have to bear. Each morning, before the sun had fully broken through the horizon, he rose to the relentless rhythm of chores and lessons. Moose's eyes, once filled with gentle pride at the sight of his son's laughter, had become steely with an unspoken demand for excellence. "There is no room for error," he would say in a low, unwavering tone as he guided Kinna through the precise techniques of plowing, planting, and harvesting. Every mistake was met with a furrowed brow and a sigh heavy with disappointment, as if the weight of the world rested on that single error. Amina, too, held high expectations. While she wove the colorful threads of tradition into every aspect of Kinna's life, she also instilled in him an almost unbearable sense of duty. In the quiet hours of the night, as the village slept under the shimmering glow of the moon, Amina would review Kinna's progress, her eyes scanning for any sign of weakness or distraction. "You must remember," she would whisper as if to herself, "that every hardship you endure is a stepping stone to greatness." In these moments, her voice, though soft and melodic, carries an intensity that belied the gentleness in her touch. The lessons, though meant to prepare Kinna for a life of honor, slowly began to erode the natural exuberance of his childhood. Where once his laughter rang freely in the open fields, there now lay a silence, a quiet, internal mourning for the innocence that was slipping away. The rigid routines and unyielding demands left little room for the spontaneity of play, and the child who had once danced with the wind now walked with a heaviness in his step. Even the natural beauty of Ndogo seemed to echo his internal sorrow. The vibrant sunsets and rustling palms bore witness to a quiet grief that seeped into every corner of his heart. Kinna's eyes, once wide with wonder, now sometimes appeared clouded with unspoken sadness. In the stillness of dusk, when the village's collective heartbeat slowed to a gentle hum, he would often retreat to a small clearing near the edge of the baobab grove. There, beneath the watchful gaze of ancient trees, he allowed himself a moment of solitude, a time to reflect on the relentless pressure that weighed him down. He did not fully understand that this burden was born not of malice, but of love, a love so steeped in the rigid traditions of Ndogo that it had lost its gentle, nurturing essence. Unbeknownst to Musa and Amina, each day in which Kinna dutifully performed his tasks was a day in which his inner self was slowly being chipped away by a subtle, insidious form of hurt. The very measures meant to instill discipline, the harsh reprimands, the stern lectures on duty, the unyielding standards, were, in their unwavering insistence, inflicting wounds that went unseen by those who cared most for him. Kinna's spirit, fragile and tender as a blossom at the first light of spring, began to wither under the constant barrage of unrelenting expectations. The village elders often spoke of discipline and sacrifice as the twin pillars upon which greatness was built. They recited proverbs that praised perseverance and abhorred weakness. Yet, in these revered sayings, there was no room for the gentle nuances of a child's heart, no acknowledgement of the silent pain that could fester when love was measured solely by performance. Kinna's failures, however minor they might have been, were met with an intensity of emotion that left him feeling unworthy and broken. When he stumbled over a row of crops or mispronounced a word during the recitation of folktales, the disappointment in his parents' eyes cut deeper than any spoken rebuke. At home, the routine was relentless. Every day became a cycle of work, study, and the ever-present specter of criticism. In the dim light of the early morning, before the world had fully awakened, Kinna would rise and sit quietly by the small clay stove, his face hidden in the shadow of a hand that trembled with the weight of unshed tears. His parents, absorbed in their own struggles to uphold the legacy of Ndogo, failed to see that each word of admonishment left behind a scar that would one day mar the very soul of the child they so desperately wished to shape into a pillar of the community. In the rare moments when Kinna dared to dream of a kinder world, his thoughts would stray to visions of laughter and carefree play. He imagined a world where the gentle caress of the breeze was as tender as a mother's hug, and where every mistake was met with understanding rather than harsh judgment. Yet, these dreams were fleeting, like the ephemeral glow of fireflies on a dark night. The reality of his daily life was one where love was conditioned on obedience and success, and any deviation from the prescribed path was met with disappointment, a betrayal that was as quiet as it was profound. The quiet suffering that had taken root in Kinna's heart grew more pronounced with each passing season. In the solitude of his secret refuge beneath the baobab grove, he began to document his feelings in a small journal, the pages filled with trembling script that spoke of hidden pain. One cool evening, when the air was heavy with the scent of rain and the promise of change, Kinna made a decision that would forever alter the course of his life. With trembling fingers and a heart that pounded like distant drums, he penned a letter addressed to the very parents who had given him life, a letter meant to convey the silent agony that had taken hold of him. In that letter, Kinna poured out every ounce of sorrow, every whispered cry that had been stifled by the relentless demands of discipline. He described nights spent awake under the dim glow of an oil lamp, where each tear was a testament to the betrayal of a love that should have been unconditional. He wrote of the moments when the harshness in his parents' voices cut deeper than any wound inflicted by the elements, and how the cold rigidity of their expectations left him feeling abandoned even in the presence of those who loved him. With each word, the fragile parchment bore witness to the unintentional cruelty of well-meant actions, a betrayal so profound that it left him questioning the very nature of love and sacrifice. The next morning, the letter found its way into the hands of an elderly village elder, one whose wisdom was revered throughout Ndogo. As the elder read the words etched in Kinna's delicate hand, his heart sank beneath the weight of the revelation. Here was a child, beloved by the community, silently suffering beneath a mantle of discipline that had become indistinguishable from abuse. The elder's eyes, clouded with sorrow, reflected the quiet devastation of a truth that had been hidden in plain sight for too long. When the letter was brought before Musa and Amina, it shattered the comfortable illusion that they had been infallible stewards of their son's destiny. They listened in silence as the elder recounted the contents of Kinna's heartfelt confession, a confession that spoke not of defiance or rebellion, but of a deep, unrecognized pain. The words, once so soft and delicate on paper, now resonated with a force that shook the very foundation of their hearts. The realization that their attempts at discipline had become a source of suffering for the one they loved more than life itself was a betrayal they could scarcely fathom. Musa's eyes, which had always burned with an intensity born of a lifetime of hardship, now glistened with the sting of regret. He recalled the many times he had raised his voice in anger, believing that each stern word would forge his son into a man of honor. Amina's own heart, once full of tender resolve, was broken by the realization that her insistence on unyielding obedience had closed off the gentle channels through which a child's love should flow. Their regret was not born of malice, but of an overwhelming sorrow, a sorrow that whispered, "We have failed you, my child."